Welcome, gamers, to Basement Arcade Pause Menu, the show where we hit pause, sit back, and just chill. I am your host, Ben Magnet, and today my guest on the show is a gentleman who's created a nice little twist on an all-time classic. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Yuriy Yakimenko, the gentleman who created the game RealPong. Yuri, how are you, sir?
I'm good, Ben. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. So, Yuri, you're every person I've had on Pause Menu, I always ask them how they got into video games. And before I ask you how you got into video games, the question first I want to ask you is, when did you first play Pong? Because obviously you created a game called Real Pong, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But obviously Pong is like one of the all time most classic of classic video games. So did you first play it when it was just like a standalone game in the arcades, or did you have one of those at home game consoles, or what was your first introduction to Pong?
Yes, sure. I have to say that I'm coming from Ukraine, which is back then was a part of the former Soviet Union, and behind the Iron Curtain, we didn't have Atari platform.
Mm-hmm.
You can imagine that, right?
Yeah.
But we had our version of Pong, which is kind of similar.
Mm-hmm.
And I played it when I was a kid, like maybe 9 or 10 years old. I remember that. And that was early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm guessing that, we had a modification of the game. You had to pay, again, it was basically you had to pay a little bit of money. You had to pay a small change to play. You played for a couple of minutes. If you win the game, you play again. That was the game. Well, that was the deal. So, that was 40 years ago.
Oh, wow. Wow. So you said you were from Eastern Ukraine during the Soviet Union.
No, I am just from Ukraine. I'm actually from Kiev. Yep.
Okay. When did you come to the United States, if you don't mind my asking?
25 years ago. Late 90s, 97.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you came right when the home console market, well, obviously the home console market here in the United States just reached new highs with the Super Nintendo, the PlayStation, the N64 eventually. So what got you into video games?
I'm not really a video game developer. Exactly. Okay. I am just a developer. This is just my hobby, more or less. Okay. So, what got me into this? I decided to make a game that was actually similar to what I played when I was a child, because it was my favorite game back then. Okay. Obviously, I think that I'm not sure how that old game was exactly functioning. I think it was more of an analog device behind it. Not exactly sure how it was programmed, but so I had to recreate this from memory, more or less. Okay, the first version that I programmed, the first full-fledged version of it, was made in the early 2000s, so about 20 years ago, and I made it for Windows with DirectX. Then I had this game again reprogrammed for iOS devices about 10 years later. So I had this version of it for iOS, for iPhone. And just recently, I decided, because I wanted a network version, and networking is an important part of it. So you can play against the computer, which is a standard part, but playing against someone else requires a network. Unix, Linux is the best platform to program anything network. And I made it for Linux, which was my idea from a long time ago. I just didn't have enough time. So I eventually found the time, and I made it. You did see the game during the show, right, when you came. I also used a small library that's cross-platform, so it was easy to, once I have a Linux version, it was easy to port it into Windows as well with very minor modifications. And I hope to make the Mac version pretty soon too.
Okay, so let's see, how do I So that was how you created the idea for RealPong. But what got you into like enjoying video games? Like, what was the game that say, "Oh, I like playing video games"? Was it Pong, or was it something else that was introduced to you later on in your life? It's like, "Hey, video games is really fun. I like doing this as a hobby. I like doing this for fun." Was there a certain game that sparked your idea into coding, or playing video games in general, or was it always Pong?
No, not always. Pong was just one of my favorites.
Hmm.
Okay, but the rest of the games, like Tetris, I mean, what can you do? It's already programmed. It's already great. I just cannot see how you can improve it. Frankly, this I could see that I can improve it, and I can work out my own logic there. Um, I didn't see anything that would be even close to what I had around. I did enough search and I couldn't find anything like this. The classic Pong, as you remember, you can move only up and down.
Hmm.
That's very simplistic. You just use your keyboard, right? Just two buttons on your keyboard, two keys. And here, the version that I have is far more dynamic. Um, Frankly, it's a lot more fun to play. So that was my idea. Besides this, yeah, I did a couple of other classic games with minor twists that I added, but nothing really major. I mean, games in general is not something what I do as my main job. So,
Hmm.
and I do something only when I see that okay, I can really improve it or I can add a significant feature to it. Otherwise, um, just remaking somebody's work, I don't find it very interesting.
Let me rephrase. Was there any specific video game that you personally played that essentially sparked this for you to do this retake on Pong? And for the audio and visual and for the listeners, people watching or listening to this, real Pong is different. So instead of the paddles just going up and down, you can, if you use your mouse, you could go, the paddle moves everywhere, which honestly I think is already a great take on Pong, because I do agree Pong is so simple. You just go left or right or up and down, whichever way you're playing it. So this adds a little bit more strategy and a little more depth and more reflex action to the game. But what I want to know is, was there a video game that you personally played that sparked as like, hey, this is something I enjoy doing, or was there a game that you played that wanted you to get into coding or
That was the
essentially
game.
that
That
was
was the
game
game
Pong?
that initially sparked my interest in programming in general.
All right.
Okay, right. So in a way, you can say that I always wanted to create this game. I always to see how would it be working if I program it myself, right?
Hmm.
Because uh, there is no source code that I can borrow. Frankly, I
Right.
had to recreate it from scratch, just
Oh wow.
from a memory. Yeah.
Oh wow. How long did it take you to go from like initial concept to finally like making this game?
I remember starting working on pieces of this game in mid 90s.
Okay. Oh, so this has been
Believe
a
it or
long
not,
endeavor.
that was before. If you remember those days, most people used DOS, not Windows. So there was an early version of this game that
Hmm.
I did that was using a text mode.
Okay.
And in order to make the graphics fine, working smoothly in the text mode, I had to modify the glyphs of individual characters, if you know what I'm talking about. So you could modify the glyphs to make your paddle really move smoothly on a screen, as if
Hmm.
this is a graphic mode. And that was close enough. Unfortunately, I didn't finish it back then. A, because networking capabilities were not quite there yet. I tried making it play over network. I had limited success, but frankly, I ran out of time back then. Besides this, obviously, until Apple opened their App Store, there was no good way to distribute the games.
Right.
Those app stores that existed before were mostly third-party stores. Um, Very few people went there to specifically, get the games. We didn't have the modern app store um, concept until sometime. So that was the reason why it didn't take off. I think 20 years ago, and I had more success with iOS version. Hopefully, but I think that frankly, the best way to play this game is actually on a computer, not on screen with your finger, because your finger in part obscures the screen, and that's not the best way to do it.
No, I haven't even played this game on my phone, and I only played it for the short time when I met you at SoCal Gaming Expo at the time of this recording, which was just last weekend. And I wholeheartedly agree. Playing it with a mouse was very smooth, and already because Pong is one of those games that you see Pong, even if you've never touched a video game in your life, I feel like everyone knows what Pong is. It's a very and when I
I
say
just
this, I
recently, excuse me, I just recently read a great description of what is the good game. The good game, somebody said that good game is something that is very intuitive to start playing. You don't have to go through learning curve, right? You
Mhm.
just start naturally, but it's hard to master. So
Oh yeah.
basically, you can go up and up. So that I think that game fits the description. It's very intuitive. You just grab your mouse and you start playing. There's no other way to play it. But in order to master it, it's not that easy.
Yeah. Funny enough, the last time I remember having as because I did have an absolute blast with Pong, I had to force myself to step away because I knew if I stayed there, I was just going to be essentially taking that spot at your table and just constantly taking on more and more challengers and not moving, not letting anyone
I
else
also
play.
remember you were basically shooting it, right? Recording it, so that
Yeah, I
maybe
was
was
I was trying to record it to get some footage for
right.
on my phone because
Makes
I
it a little
like
bit more difficult.
yeah. Because last time I had that much fun playing Pong was at another convention a few years ago, where I saw a 3D table of Pong, which was essentially just regular old Pong, but it was like a 3D table where the ball and the paddles were controlled by magnets, and you used a dial to move them up and down. And it was not on a computer screen, but it was like a 3D coffee table, and me and my best friend were constantly going we were going through the convention, and we would always and whenever that table opened up, we would always gravitate back towards that and to
So it was
and
magnets, right? Interesting.
mhm. Yeah, it's like an actual 3D coffee table where you could play Pong, fully like licensed by Atari. But seeing your game on how the paddles move freely, that was like this changes the game. Because with Pong, it's like, you just go up and down, or in some way side to side. It's essentially air hockey, or it's table tennis. But with your game, you can move your paddle in all directions. It's omnidirectional, and that really changes how you play the game. It's how you can defend, how you can attack. There's so much more strategy with this instead of just being quick enough to move your paddle up. How long and how long did it take you to like perfect that type of programming for this game?
You mean the playing against the computer?
Yeah.
Well, that was actually the biggest challenge. How
Hmm.
do you program the computer so that it is interesting to play? Essentially, what I did is I tried to watch how humans play
Hmm.
and try to imitate at least up to some extent. I didn't go overboard. Didn't want to do too much because you also want to understand that this is actually a computer, not a human, but you want to add some human-like behavior. For example, you start moving in one direction, just maybe as a progression of your old movement, right? And then you react on the ball going in a different direction. So you don't move just linearly. You might do a zigzag sometimes, right? And that's what
Hmm.
humans do. what people do, and up to some extent, you want to mimic that kind of motion, and it actually makes it more fun and more interesting to play, right?
Oh yeah.
I think maybe we could add at some point we could have AI elements to it.
Mhm.
I've been thinking about it, but frankly, AI is a little bit going into different direction. AI in this case, um, we can maybe better simulate the movement of humans, but if you program AI too well, you're not going to win against the UI. And the idea is to let, at some point, a human win this game, otherwise it's just not fun, right?
Mhm.
So the idea was to at some point, you try hard enough to win against the computer. That
Yeah.
depends, of course, on your setting. So you
Yeah.
have
It's
to
like
program it to lose sometimes,
yeah, it's
right?
like those times when you're trying to play chess against a computer, and then they make a move that you feel is illegal, but you just never saw it coming.
You see, the difference between chess, say, for example, is there is no clear concept on how to make a computer to win always against a human, right? You have to put a learning part. But in this is not chess. This is a simple game. You
Yeah.
can program easily the computer to never lose, if you think about it, right?
Hmm.
But if you make computer always win, it's not fun, right? You don't want to play against the computer and always lose.
Yeah, that would be a very that would be a very short. I mean, there is a joke among quite a few gamers where there are days where there's some days the AI decides you're going to lose no matter what you do, and especially with a game like a Real Pong, that would definitely be if the computer were to always win, that would definitely make for a short game. And I must say though, I mean, when I did play this game, I did play against a real human. I was tempted to play against a computer, but I definitely feel the best strength of this game is playing with someone else.
I think you played against the computer.
Oh, I did. I wasn't playing with
Yes.
the. I thought there was a kid next to me. Ah, darn. I felt bad because I
You
can't
thought you
remember.
were playing against me, but you were playing against the computer.
Okay, because I thought there was a
Right.
someone else next. I thought there was someone next to me because you had two computers set up, and I thought they were linked. But
Yes.
maybe.
But I think you played against the computer,
Oh,
if I remember
okay.
correctly. Okay.
Oh, cool. Then I don't feel so bad because I looked over and I thought I was playing against like a 15 or 16-year-old, and if I was and I was like, oh, I destroyed this kid. Now, if I was playing against a computer, then okay, I don't
It's
feel so
not
bad
that
then.
obvious. It's not that obvious.
All right, that's good. Um, but I do. Okay, so I thought I was playing against someone else, but it turns out I was playing against a computer. Either way, the game is still extremely fun to play, and it's a great take on Pong. Oh, I had another question. So, like we said earlier, that you like Pong was one of those games that was like is very easy to, or maybe not easy, but it was one of those games where, like I can change one thing, make it the paddles omnidirectional, and all of a sudden, boom, changes the whole outlook of the game. If you had the time, resources to do it, is there possibly any other game that if you were to do your own twist on it, what would that game be, and what would you change?
Actually, even speaking of Pong, there is more things that you can do. For
Ooh, okay.
example, yeah, if you make a field narrower,
Mm,
and I tried it, so I
mhm.
know that that works. If you make the field different size, make it narrower, it entirely changes the game.
Okay.
Okay, so that's actually one thing that I plan to add to the current game at some
Oh,
point.
okay.
Okay,
Oh, so,
you will be able to control this.
ooh, okay.
Okay.
Are are there any other things to Real Pong that you want to add to the future, or is right now the vision is just just change one little thing, let that go for a time, and then see how things go, and then add more stuff down the line, or
Other than maybe making little twists to make the user interface a little bit better, maybe more intuitive, because right now I'm just not sure how intuitive it overall is. I'm hoping that it's simple enough, just one menu, and then you control everything from that menu. I don't see really how I can change it fundamentally. Okay, but you were asking a question about what can I do to other games to make them more interesting. Well, one of the other simple games that I also have is the well-known Minesweeper,
Hmm.
right? So again, around the same time that I was doing Pong back in the 90s, I made a twist to that game also, which is a puzzle, of course. But what I added is that, first of all, I made a hex version. So instead of squares, you have hexagons.
Okay.
Okay. And then, probably more important, I added the auto flag feature. And auto flag basically opens and shows you the possible solutions as you go in those cases when it's kind of obvious there is a mine there.
Hmm.
So you don't have to flag it yourself, which to me was a little bit boring. I didn't want to get bored with the game. I wanted a faster solution, so I added this feature. And I'm always looking at things like this. What can I add to make it more, um, in my opinion, a better play,
Hmm.
better game experience?
Yeah, Minesweeper was. I mean, when I first was introduced to Minesweeper, I was very young. I was in like kindergarten when I first played the game. I had no idea what I was doing. I would just click a button or I click a square, and I would see all these random numbers, and I'm like, I don't know what any of this means. I would just like keep clicking squares until I clicked on a mine, and next thing I know, the little smiley face in the middle would just turn into a frowny face with two X's for eyes. And I think a friend of mine told me what the numbers meant, but even today I couldn't tell you what the numbers mean in Minesweeper. I'm just like, oh yeah, I know of Minesweeper. I don't know how to play Minesweeper, but I know what Minesweeper is.
Well, it's one of those games that you go and you do when you're bored, I guess.
Or when you're a little kid, you just like constantly click around and you just wait to click one of the bombs. You're like, oh, there it is, and then you see the gigantic like 100, like the 100 by 100 square or the hundreds,
Area, right? Open up,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
that one where it's like this big giant screen of Minesweeper, and you just go, whoa, and you just like click random buttons, and all of a sudden, oh, there's a
By the
mine.
way, that version of Minesweeper is you can also download on both Linux Store.
Hmm.
I put it there just before that game. The Minesweeper was more of a testing ground for me, right? When I ported this game to modern Linux, okay,
Hmm.
because I wanted to use the SDL library, and I had to learn this SDL library. Before jumping into more complex stuff with Pong, I used Minesweeper as a test project, more or less.
Okay.
By the way, it
Hmm.
it is downloading pretty well.
That's good. Now going to RealPong, so obviously it's supported by Linux and Windows, and a Mac version is coming soon. Is
Maybe,
this game? Oh, maybe, hopefully, fingers
right?
crossed. Because that's unfortunately that's my main computer right now is a Mac. Excuse me. Um, I forgot I didn't ask you this when I was at the show because I wanted to save it for this interview. But I mean, obviously there is network capabilities with RealPong. So can you? Is I forgot the game is on Steam, correct?
No, it's not on
Oh, it's
Steam.
not on
You can
Steam.
just download it from Snap Store for Linux
Okay.
and from Windows Store on Windows. So
Okay.
I'm just using the official stores.
Okay. So, um, let me rephrase. So, can you find one of your friends who to tell them like, "Hey, get this game and we can play online"? That's a function you could use in RealPong, correct?
Right,
Or is
right.
okay. All right. Because I'm trying to, because after I was playing it at the show, I was like, man, this would actually be really fun to play for maybe like this might be some time down the line, but I could definitely see people having like tiny little real Pong tournaments because I feel like this would be a really fun tournament style
I
game.
completely agree. Right, it's a fun game to play. at parties, and you can even have your tournaments.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And also, I really noticed that you went into the tennis style, or maybe not tennis style scoring, but especially with the sets and the matches. Because when I was playing the game, we went up to, I want to say, like 10 points, and then said, okay, here's one. Like match one goes to one player, and then it goes match two. I was like, oh, so there's, because in classic Pong, you hit to a certain thing, a winner is declared, or you hit to
Right,
a certain
right.
point threshold, a winner is
I
declared, and
don't
then the match
actually
resets.
remember what was the rule for Classic Pong, the Atari version. Here I decided to use the rules of actual ping pong game,
Okay.
which is goes until 11.
Mm-hmm.
So you win with 11 points scored, except you have to be at least two points ahead of your opponent. So
Mm-hmm.
11 to 10, you're still playing
Mm-hmm.
until it's 12 to 10. Okay, and you have to win three uh, three sets. We can call it that way. So not just one. You have to win three sets in order to win the game. I decided not to reinvent the wheel here. Just use the official rules. Actually, in the early version, which was from 2003, there was also an option. These rules have also been changing. The official Pong rules, the old rules were until 21, not until 11.
Oh wow.
Yeah, when I was like teenager, I also played ping pong, the actual ping pong,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember it was 21 when you win the game, right? So, but then around I think it was late 90s or early 2000s, that they decided to change to 11, and that's what I'm currently using.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, ping pong. I also feel is like one of those games that you grow up, you think you're knowing how to play, but then when you look at the actual rules, you go, "Oh, I've been playing this game all wrong." Then, because I definitely remember, I just got some flashbacks of playing some, because we had a ping pong table at my college campus, and we definitely did not
Maybe
play
the
by the
change of
rules.
the rules is what gets you confused, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Because I will say, I would, when I was say I was taken aback, I do not mean that as a bad thing. Because when I reached like 11 points and the score reset, I'm like, okay, cool, I won. And I was about to walk away, and then the ball appears and said set two. I was like, oh, I'm still going. Okay, let's, because
Right.
especially with the version of Pong I played at the other convention years ago, the 3D Pong, it was set to when a certain player hits, maybe I think it was a score of 7 or something. There was a score threshold that you could set
Yes, seven
when a
zero. You also win the game, by the
oh
way.
oh clean sweep. All right,
Yep.
nice. But yeah, because at a certain when a certain score threshold is reached, the game like stops, a winner is declared, and then it's resets to zero. And depending on where you are, you could put more coins in or more credits in to start a new game. But with Real Pong, I was very pleasantly surprised that the game kept going until I reached that third and final set, and essentially I was like, oh, this game goes for a while. So, are there settings in Real Pong that you can change up to be like, oh, instead of having 3 sets, there's 2 sets, or is it set as a very certain way?
I did have this setting in iOS version when
Mm-hmm.
I called it Express setting. So you just play. Yeah, you just played shorter. I think it was until 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of similar um, to tennis, right? When you have difference between men's tennis and women's tennis.
Mm-hmm.
If you know, men play until 3 sets, and women sometimes play until 2. I know it's different in different tournaments and in different stages, I think. But sometimes, yes, there is a shorter play. So,
Okay.
but to me, it doesn't really make big difference. If you want to consider yourself winning the game after 2, so be it, right? You can consider that. But officially, I just decided, frankly, there are already too many settings to control. I didn't want to confuse the user. There are
Okay.
important settings, for example, how you control the sensitivity of your ball.
Hmm.
Okay, and on the other hand, the sensitivity of your mouse. How quickly does it move? You want it to be moving pretty quickly, but not too fast.
Right.
Okay, and of course, it's a personal setting.
Hmm.
Some people like it's faster, some not. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. This is coming from my personal experience because I mostly play video games through a video game console. When I first got a hold of a first-person shooter on a PC where my crosshair was controlled by the mouse, it was very disorienting for me because it's like, whoa, it moves so fast, and I wasn't able to hit any of my targets because I was just going like moving blindly. And like you were saying, how the sensitivity of the mouse can definitely pull into play. I completely understand that because I was one of those people when I went from console to when I played a game on PC for the first time, I saw how sensitive it was and how quick I had to control my own reactions instead of I would overshoot something or I would move something like too far over or too far under because I didn't know where the nice, the sweet spot was. Same with your game because moving your paddles over the board, while it adds a great level of strategy to the game, you can also be one of those people just like flailing your mouse around and missing the ball every single time.
Yeah, a lot of people during that demo, I could see that people tried to cheat, especially kids. They would just move the mouse all over the screen, try
Oh
to
no.
to break the game. That didn't doesn't really work. But yeah, like half of the people were trying to do that.
Oh, they were?
Yes, kids
Oh
especially.
wow.
Yes.
From what you can remember that weekend, what was like the funniest interaction you saw when people would play your game? Was it the kids trying to break the game or was it something else?
Uh, well, first of all, I was surprised to see that all ages like it. Absolutely, from like kids that are 12-year-old
Hmm.
to people who are retired. Everybody was you know those people who didn't see this game before. Even
Hmm.
some didn't never played Pong before. Okay,
Oh.
they would grab the mouse and they didn't know initially what to do. So they started moving, and then in 30 seconds you see a smile on their face, and they're getting excited, especially when they play against somebody else.
Hmm.
Okay, but most of the time that was the case. I tried to invite two people for the most part to play one against another, like you would invite a daughter with a father, right? And that was fun. So I cannot. I kind of expected that kids would like it more,
Hmm.
but it wasn't the case. Everybody liked it.
That's I think that's the sign of a truly timeless classic video game is when even like because Pong like the original version of Pong, like the archaic old of the old, like older than dirt style Pong, came out in the 70s. One of the most, and I say this in the nicest way possible, the most basic form of video games
Yep.
has stood the test of time
And I read that
this
this was
long.
made as an exercise. It wasn't really developed as a real game until Atari discovered how popular it was. And then they decided to actually make it into the real collection. It was just an exercise of one of the developers at Atari.
You know what? That kind of makes sense. I could actually see it being used as an exercise tool for hand eye coordination. Huh. And it became one of the most popular video games of all time.
Then they discovered how many coins they had
Yeah. Yeah, that.
in the machine, and they realized that it's a great game.
I remember hearing a story somewhere that when Nolan Bushnell bought one of his first Atari like one of his first Atari cabinets, the when he placed it in the bar, the owner of the bar was constantly calling him to come over and empty the coin slot because people were just pumping quarters into it, and the game and the coin slot was so full that he had to constantly go in and empty out the thing because once it got full, it wouldn't accept any quarters, and essentially it was a air quotes. It wasn't broken, but people
You would
wanted to play.
you go out of business if you don't clear your coins.
Nope, you gotta you gotta keep clearing those coins.
Right.
But going back to my original point, because you were saying that everyone, like kids, adults, young adults like me, they were coming over and they were loving the game. That's what I think is truly the mark of a true timeless classic in a game like Pong, and even the type of games that spawned from Pong, like yours. Because yours is different enough that it invokes those feelings of the old one, but it once again takes a new twist on it, and it brings freshness to a game that's very, I don't want to say rudimentary, but it's very like basic in its controls. Like you said, it's very intuitive. You sit down, you know what to do in the first 30 seconds, and you're off to the races. And that is a sign of a game that I want to say will stick around for a very, very long time. And also, I want to say it, kudos to you, because you found a way to make Pong. I mean, not just interesting again, but it's like, hey, let's have some more fun with Pong, and it proves to other game developers that bigger is not always better. Sometimes it's like, hey, let's just take a step back, take a breath. Let's just play. Let's just play something simple. Let's just play around a real Pong. And next thing you know, you've been playing it for hours, and the sun's coming back up.
Well, obviously, it's very subjective. I think it depends on what do you play when you're a child. What do you start playing with? Those kids that start playing 3D games, shooting games when they're kids, they're probably not going to play this game for very long because they like shooting games and they like traveling in 3D space, right? But it's kind of similar to what you listen what kind of music you listen when you're a kid, right? That affects your taste for the rest of your life. Okay, here is the same thing. I played more simpler games like 2D games, and I think they are great as long as they are challenging enough. They can be challenging enough. I don't personally find myself challenged by 3D games, shooting games.
Mm-hmm.
Why would I travel in that imaginary 3D space to shoot someone? Right? I can travel in a real 3D space and, for example, play tennis, which is kind of like shooting. It's even better, right? It gets you
Yeah,
exercised,
and
right?
safer.
Yes. So your tastes are dependent on what you have grown up, what you played, and what you did when you were growing up.
Mm-hmm. So before we end this, I do have one more question for you, sir. What's next? I mean, obviously, there's more stuff to do with RealPong, but is there any other project that you're working on personally that you want to bring out after RealPong, or you just want to stick with RealPong and work on that for a while?
I'm thinking what I can make. I understand that actually to make a great game, it doesn't have to be complex.
Right.
Think about Tetris,
Mm-hmm.
probably the greatest game of all, right? When it comes to popularity, at least, right? It wasn't very complex. It is not complex. It is quite simple, but you can spend hours and hours playing it. What I'm trying to figure out is, the original developer of that game. Think about it. How he came up with that idea. How do you actually invent the idea of Tetris?
I believe because there was a documentary that this other YouTuber made about Tetris, and it's the gaming historians video. It's
Right.
about an hour
Well, we
long
have a
documentary.
new movie, right, that
Right,
recently
right,
came out. Doesn't really explain how the developer came up with the idea.
right.
Maybe we can find it out. But I remember from the movie, the guy had two kids, right? So maybe it was the kids' play that told him something about what what can be done on a computer, because it's just a blocks game, and that
Mm-hmm.
blocks is something that kids play with, right? And it's very
Mm-hmm.
simple. You just put blocks together so that they fit together. But now you have to invent the whole falling blocks idea, how they would fall out, right? And then you make a game. By the way, it wasn't even color. The original version didn't require any color. It was also text mode, right? So you see, coming up with a good idea. On one hand, the idea can be pretty simple, but it is actually coming up with a good game idea that's not simple.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very subjective because yes, we humans like certain things. For example, in case of Tetris, we like packing things together. That's the idea, right? We made those blocks fit into place as tightly as possible. That's what we do in life when you go to your storage space, right? You try to put your stuff as tight as possible to save space, I guess. So it's the same concept, and this is something that I guess gives us some pleasure, right? Overall.
I cannot tell you how many times when I'm packing and trying to organize stuff that myself or my fiance or my mom or any of my friends say, we gotta Tetris this together. We use
Right.
Tetris
It
as
made into a verb, right?
Yeah, we made it into a verb.
Right. So I'm guessing that if you want to invent a great new game, you have to observe what humans like, what in real life gives us a degree of comfort, a degree of satisfaction, and that can, lead to a next good idea about the game. That's my
Well,
conclusion.
all right. Well, sir, I believe you have made a great game. I believe you have made an
Thank you.
addicting game. And I am also going to be very patiently waiting for a possible Mac version because I do want to play this game again because I found this game to be very fun that I knew I had to pull myself away from it. Otherwise, I was going to be stuck at your table for the rest of the day and I
Right.
wasn't going to see anything else. So, Yuriy, one more time, where can people find RealPong?
Okay. For those of you who are on Linux, in particular Ubuntu Linux, which is the most popular distribution of Linux, there are also other versions based on this Ubuntu Linux. You can go into Snap Store. That's the main store for Ubuntu applications, and you can download it from there. Just type RealPong, one word, or just Pong. There is only one Pong, I believe, there, and you will find it. It's same on Windows Store. Actually, it's called Microsoft Store these days. So again, type RealPong. There you will see a blue icon, and just download it from there. The game is free on both platforms, including the network functionality. It's all free at this point. So, and frankly, I don't plan to change this anytime soon. So, I just want to get more people involved. That's
You
how
hear that, people? The game's free. Go get it.
go get it. Yeah, you can enjoy it. You can spend your time with your kids, or you can play it at parties. It's great for parties, I think, if you want to entertain your guests. You just put one computer or two computers. You can play it over Wi-Fi at your home and have a blast.
And
Right?
also invite me to your future the RealPong tournaments. I want to play.
That will be interesting. Yes.
Challenge accepted. Anyways, and I assume that there's no like social media accounts for RealPong, correct?
No, I do have a Twitter for this. I also created a Telegram. If you're aware of a Telegram platform, the link is inside the application itself for the Telegram channel. There is a website, RealPong, one word, .net, where you have a Twitter link. And by the way, both download links.
All right. Well, I am definitely going to be following you on Twitter then. So yeah, RealPong on Twitter. It's on the Linux store, the Microsoft store. So Yuriy, thank you again so much for your time, and thank you for creating this awesome game. I truly did have a blast when I played at SoCal Gaming Expo last week.
Thank you. Thank you, Ben.
Of
It was
course.
a pleasure.
And for now, unpause.